Yeah, that'd be great. Haley, thank you. All right. So, bonds. That was fun, huh? Yeah, I mean, what a great way to spend a weekend. Oh, there, Haley.
Yeah, very good.
That's good. Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah, please unjoin. Okay. So yes, I'm coming through. That's awesome. All right. So what I want to do today is I want to do WebWorks bonds, and I want to take my time and walk through them. And this way, you guys can ask me questions if there were things that you didn't understand as you looked at the presentation. Hopefully, having to do the actual bond spreadsheets while you were watching it helped. But and you're going to have some homework with bonds too to get some more practice. But I thought at some point you probably need to, we need to all do it together. That's the advantage of being here this semester, right? Is that we get to do it all together. So let's just do that, and then we'll move on, and I'll give you guys some extra practice problems with bonds too. But we're going to do WebWorks together. So if you will go to Connect, it is on the bonds page. Oh, and I'm not going to share my screen on this because if you are watching this, once it's recorded, just go to Connect, go to the bonds tab, and there is something called Bonds Start. It's a spreadsheet called Bonds Start, and that is what you want to pull up, please. And then I'll start sharing. All right. So we did a little, our department did a Teams workshop on Friday that supposedly helped with this. Hopefully I'll get better at this whole sharing thing. Okay, so I think I am sharing my screen. All right. So let's look at what Mike had to say about the bonds. So if you're looking, I guess I could pull that up too, and then I could share that. So that'll give me some practice in sharing my screen, right? You have a question?
Is it supposed to be on the screen?
Yes. Oh. Yes. Thank you. Forgot that important step today. There we go. Okay, that should help. All right, so I'm going to pull up Mike's inquiries real quick, and I'll switch to that screen share because that'll give me good practice. All right, so year four inquiries. Oh wait, we were writing on this, weren't we? I need to pull up the one we were. No, it's all right. I'll just pull up this one. Okay, let's find it. There we go. We don't need any of those other ones for today. All right. Now, I think I can. Oh, see, because this is stop sharing, but not share something different. I'm going to really have to figure this out. All right. I think I can do better than this. Okay. So now I'm sharing the inquiries. And we're going to go down to what Mike had to say about the bonds. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. All right. So we asked him to tell us about his bond issuance. They do, just as a small aside here, they do have debt covenants related to the loan that they received in year 2. And a debt covenant is simply a requirement on someone who has borrowed money by the lender to protect the lender. So usually it's things like dividends, like you have to have a certain level of retained earnings to pay dividends. There's a limit on the dividends you can pay. There's a limit on your debt to equity ratio maybe. So it just puts limits on the person who borrows the money or the company that borrows the money to protect the lender. The current ratio typically has to stay at a certain level, things like that. So we, as the auditor or reviewer of WebWorks, would certainly be aware of what those debt covenants were on their loan, and they did violate them because WebWorks has issued a lot of debt. They have the loan, they have the finance lease, which is a very large non-current liability. They did the pension plan this year, which is actually has not increased their liabilities yet, but will when we fix that. And then they issued the bonds. So I have purposefully set WebWorks up this way because I'm teaching you liabilities, all right? And we are going to get to the equity side in year 5. We're going to hit equity really hard in year 5. So they haven't issued any new stock in the 4 years that they have been in operations. So they haven't really done anything with the equity side of the business. So yes, they are very heavily debt financed right now. And again, that is because of the way that I set them up, because I want to teach you liabilities. So just keep that in mind. Like, they did violate their debt covenants, but you can see what Mike has to say, that they did increase their debt to equity ratio above what the loan covenants allowed, but the bank agreed to let us do so as long as the bonds were subordinated. And what that means is, subordinated debt means that if WebWorks were to go bankrupt, the bank would get their money first, and the bondholders would be beneath them in priority. Okay. And then he says they do have plans to issue preferred stock next year and to pay off some of the debts next year. Okay, so the bank has agreed to allow them to go over their limit on this particular debt covenant. So as long as and we'd have to have that in writing, guys, just so you know. As the reviewer, we would certainly want to have proof from the bank that they were allowed to do that, not take WebWorks' word for it. And but in this case, we'll take WebWorks' word for it. Okay, so information about the bond. So from your presentation, you may recall that bonds are they are very much like a loan, but they're a loan that you get from multiple parties instead of just a single party like a bank. They are purchased and sold on an open market, just like stock. So we have a bond market. So it's debt that's bought and sold, just like stock is bought and sold, which means that it has a market rate, just like stock does. Okay, so that's what makes bonds, accounting for bonds different than accounting for a loan, is that market rate that we have to deal with. Okay, so with a loan, if the bank says the interest rate is going to be 7%, it's 7%. It's in the contract. With bonds, unfortunately, we have to set a rate of interest, but the market may change it. Okay, so that's where we run into some complications with bonds, is that we may set an interest rate of 7%, but on the day that we actually issue the bonds, the market demands 8% interest, and then we have to pay 8%. Okay, so there are 2 ways that we can accomplish that, right? The first would be to do what? What sounds like the easy way to do that? If we said we were going to pay 7% and the market says no, we want 8%, we would just what? We'd pay 8%, right? Instead of so if, let's say the interest payment is $4,000 a year. I don't know. Let's just, whatever it is. So the interest payment on if it was 7%, if we were to use our 7% rate, it would be $4,000 a year. And if it's 8%, I am not doing any math here, guys. I'm just making this up, okay? If it's 8%, let's say it's $5,000 a year, all right? Then we could just send out a check for $5,000 a year for interest instead of $4,000 a year. That sounds like the easiest thing in the world, but it's not how we do it. it's because the interest rate is a contract. So if we say that cash interest payments are 7% and that's $4,000, then we have to send out a $4,000 check. Okay, so that means that I'm interested in these bonds. I'm willing to buy these bonds, but I'm demanding an 8% interest rate, and they're telling me that they can only send me the check for 7% each year. There's only one other way that I can achieve an 8% rate. And what is that? If they're not going to send me a check for more than $4,000, which is 7%, how can I achieve an 8% interest rate? Exactly. Is that when I loan them the money initially on the bonds, I don't give them the full cash value of the bond. Okay? That's the only other way I can achieve that 8% interest rate, is if they are $50,000 bonds, I pay in less than $50,000. And at the end of the, however long the period is, they pay me $50,000 back. So I put in $45,000 to begin with. They pay me $50,000 at the end. I get that additional interest in that last cash payment. Does that make sense? So that's what we have to do. That's really all this is. So everything that you watched, that's really all it was saying when the market rate and the stated rate don't match. Okay? And it can flip, right? With the premium, you saw with the premium, it flipped. Where the market was only demanding 6% when we said we were going to pay 7%. So the only way that we could get to the 6% rate was if they paid in more money at the front and we still paid in. So let's say they gave us $60,000 at the beginning and we still only paid them $50,000 at the end. Then we get an effective rate that's lower than the stated rate. Okay? So that's all this is, guys, is instead of increasing the cash interest payments to give them the market rate, which we can't do legally, the bondholders just pay in less money at the beginning and they get the same interest rate at the end. Okay, in the end. Now, the hard part then, which it's really not hard because Excel does the work for us, but the only complication then, I guess, is that we have to determine how much cash are they going to pay in at the beginning, okay? And to do that, we use Excel, and we use our concept of present value that we talked about last year. And I think I heard Sandy say you guys did a lot of that in your class too. So you should, I know you probably felt good about that when you saw that on the video. All right. So remember that bonds are long-term liabilities. And anytime we're dealing with a long-term liability, we have to bring it back to its present value. That is a FASB rule, that we must show liabilities at their present value. And so we need to, anytime we're going to owe money in the future, we got to back it back out to what is it worth today, okay? So bonds are the same. So does all that make sense before we start the actual example? Is that okay? It's okay to ask questions if it doesn't. Okay. All right. So, Mike tells us that they issued the bonds to raise the money needed to purchase the shares in Meacham, and in a private offering. So this actually wasn't on the bond market. Okay, so this one wasn't public, but it was still an issuance to more than one lender. Okay, so this was a private offering. We issued 80 $1,000 face value bonds with a stated interest rate of 5%. Okay, so what that tells me is that at the end of the life of the bonds, when I have to pay them back, I must pay back $80,000. Okay, that's for sure. So I can read into that. Not that I'm going to record bonds payable at $80,000. Total bonds payable at $80,000. I will record bonds payable at $80,000, but that I will pay back $80,000 at the end of the life of the bonds, and that the stated rate of interest that cannot be changed is 5% annually. So whenever you see an interest rate, it should be an annual rate. Okay. Also, Mike tells us They issue them on January 1st. They come due or mature in 5 years. So, okay, so we got 5-year bonds. Interest is paid on June 30th and December 31st. So they are semi-annual bonds. Okay, so that's crucial to my analysis. It adds a small level of complexity, but it is a small level of complexity, okay? And then the market rate of interest on January 1st was 6%. Okay, so on January the 1st, the bondholders were going to demand a 6% interest when WebWorks had stated they were only going to pay 5%. So we know immediately that we are issuing the bonds at a what? It's going to be a higher interest rate. Do you remember what the term was that I used in the video? Discount. Okay, so they were issuing the bonds at a discount. That's just the lingo that we use. We either issue bonds at a discount, at face value, or at a premium. All right. So a discount means that the stated rate of interest is lower than the market rate of interest. If we issue them at face value, stated and market equal, which is not going to happen in the real world. If we issue them where the stated rate is higher than the market rate, it's a premium. Okay? So this is a discount. So I know that I'm going to be using that discount on bonds payable account that's in my ledger.
Okay, what was the discount?
Discount is the stated rate is lower than the market rate. So in this case, the 5% stated rate is lower than the 6% market rate.
And then the second one was where they're equal.
Face value would be equal.
And the premium is stated is higher than market.
That is correct. Okay. And Mike already told us that they received cash of $76,588, and we're going to solve for that, but we had to know that to do, he had to know that to do the original entry. He doesn't know why, perhaps, but he did have to know that to do the original entry. Okay, so the first thing we need to do then is to figure out how much cash would the bondholders be willing to pay on January the 1st. Now, we already know that that's $76,588 in this case. Normally, we solve for it. So I'm going to solve for it as if we don't know, because in the problems that I give you for homework and such, you're going to start from scratch, okay? So now let's go to our spreadsheet.
You said the first thing that we had to figure out was
How much cash the bondholders would be willing to pay in for the bonds. Okay?
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so I'm going to reshare that screen. Okay. All right, so up here, I'm going to do, I don't have it very formally on my spreadsheet, but I'll try to be more formal here. Let's do this as cash paid for principal. No, actually, sorry, let's change that. Let's make this present value of bond principal. Okay. So the bond principal is how much? What's the principal amount? 80,000. So the loan amount itself, without any interest, is called the principal. And that is 80,000 in this case. Okay? So we need to figure out what the present, so basically the bondholders are going to receive two cash flows from the bonds. They're going to receive two different cash flows. One, they're going to receive $80,000 at the end of 5 years. Is this a 5-year bond? I sure hope so. Okay. They're going to receive $80,000 from WebWorks at the end of 5 years. So that's not the present value, right? They're going to receive $80,000 at the end of 5 years. I don't know how much that's worth today. Got to figure that out. They're also going to receive interest payments. they're going to receive 5% a year, 5% of 80,000 per year for the next 5 years, but they're going to receive them semi-annually. So what they're really receiving is 2.5% of 80,000 every 6 months, okay? So if 5% of 80,000 is 4,000 a year cash, they're really receiving 2,000 each 6 months for the next 5 years, okay? So they get 2 sets of cash flows. One is the 80,000 at the end of the 5 years. The other is 2,000 per every 6 months for the next 5 years. And I have to treat those separately because the principal is a one-time payment, but the interest payments are every 6 months, and we call that an annuity. So anytime we receive equal cash flows over a period of time, we call that an annuity. Okay, you may have seen those commercials for like J.G. Wentworth, right? 8776 cash now or whatever it is. Okay, I'm not going to sing for you guys. But basically, they want you to turn, like if you're getting a one-time payment in the future, or if you're getting annuity payments, you know, so you're getting like, you won a lawsuit and you're getting like $50,000 a year for the next 6 years, they'll turn that into cash today for you. But boy, will it be a whole lot less than what you would have gotten. Anyway, don't get me started on that. But annuities are anything, any equal cash flow that you receive over time. So you receive it every 6 months, every year, every 5 years, whatever. Okay, you're getting an annuity. So the bondholders are getting 2 cash flows, and we have to find the present value of both of those cash flows. So the principal, I'm just going to write it out this time, just so we have it. Okay, so what they're getting is $80,000 at the end of 5 years. Can't spell today. Okay, so the principal, they're getting $80,000 from WebWorks at the end of 5 years. Interest, they're getting $2,000 every 6 months. And if you don't know where that $2,000 is coming from, just give me a second and we'll talk about it. $2,000 every 6 months for the next 5 years. So now we have to find the present value of those amounts. So how much is it worth in today's dollars to get $80,000 at the end of 5 years? How much is it worth in today's dollars to get $2,000 every 6 months for the next 5 years? That's basically what we're trying to do. In order to do that, we must have an interest rate. And the interest rate that the bondholders are trying to achieve is their market rate, and that is the rate we're going to use, which is 6%. Okay? 6% right there. So the only thing we use the 5% for, guys, is to figure out the cash interest payments. And otherwise we ignore it. So in case you're wondering, if you weren't sure where that 2,000 was coming from, it's a 5% interest rate, stated rate, times $80,000. So 5% times $80,000 is $4,000 cash payment per year. You divide that by 2 because you're getting it every 6 months, and that's where the 2,000 comes from. So we could actually go ahead and put the 2,000 in here if we wanted to. So why don't I use formula, just so you guys can, in case you're going back and looking at it later and you're like, I can't remember where she got the 2,000, you'll be able to remember. So 80,000, so the present, the maturity value of the bond, 80,000, times the stated rate of interest, which is 5%, times 1/2, because you're doing it semi-annually. We're just going to multiply it by 0.5, okay, because it's semi-annual. So 80,000, can you guys see that? I know it's hard to, I can't really make that bigger, unfortunately. I could, well, maybe I can. Let's see. See if it makes the cells the right, oh, wait, I gotta hit enter. I'll come back to it. I can make this bigger. So let me see. See, it never increases the size up here, unfortunately. But anyway, it's 80,000 times 0.05 times 0.5. So the maturity value of the bonds times the stated rate of interest, and then multiply it by 1/2 because it's semi-annual, okay? And we can just copy that down. The other thing that we can go ahead and put in here is that the total bond, what we're going to credit bonds payable for on the journal is the full maturity value of 80,000, okay? And that's going to be true forever. It's just like when we do the short-term investments. We always record the short-term investments at the amount that the cost, the original cost, and we never change them, right? We adjust the market adjustment account for the fair value, but we never change the short-term investments themselves. This is the same thing. The bonds payable are put on at their maturity value, and we leave them alone till we take them off. The way that we adjust for that present value is through the discount. Just like the market adjustment account, the discount helps us know what the bonds are truly worth. Okay? All right. So we get two done. That's cool. Okay, so now let's go back up here and let's determine these present values that we need to determine. All right, so we're going to hit, I'm just going to go into cell F because there's like no writing that's going to spread into cell F here. So F1, and I'm going to hit this little FX guy. You guys know our function key well. And I'm going to type in to search for present value. For those of you who were in class last year, if you're using the same laptop, that may have come up straight for you. This is a brand new laptop for me, and Sandy hasn't been with us, although she may have done the present value function a bunch too, so that may have come up for her.
We used the charts.
Oh, did you really? I'm sorry.
We researched the charts.
I am so sorry.
Yeah, it was awful.
That is awful. Because at work, you're going to be using Excel, so I'm not really sure about that. That's confusing. Okay. Anyway, we're going to use Excel, and Excel is our friend for sure.
Good.
Okay. So we're going to click go, and oh, what in the world? That's unusual. Usually it comes straight up, but that's okay. We'll find it. It's going to be PV. Yeah, it's PV. I mean, we can search for it, but usually if you type in present value, PV is one of your first choices, but that's fine. So we're going to choose PV. If you don't have PV, choose PV and click OK. All right. So our rate, what rate are we going to use? We have two interest rates, right? We have a 6% and a 5%. We are always, I love it when I can say that because I can't say that all that often really, but we are always going to use the market rate here, always. Now, the only trick is because it's semi-annual, I must divide it by 2. Okay, so I'm going to take the market rate and I'm going to divide it by 2. So it is always the market rate, but when you're dealing with semi-annual, you do have to divide it by 2. So it's 6% is our market rate, and I'm going to divide that by 2, so my rate is going to be 3%. The number of periods, it's a 5-year bond, but I'm paying interest semi-annually, so that's 10 interest payments. So I'm going to have the interest rate and double the number of periods. I hate that the people online, I don't know if they can see me in all my hand motions, so I apologize for those of you online if you can't.
Sorry.
You're fine, Haley. Go ahead.
I was typing notes while
You're fine.
The rate. Can
Yes.
You tell me how to do that one more time?
Yes, it's the market rate divided by 2. So it's 6% divided by 2 because we're doing semi-annual.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
So you have the interest rate, you double the number of periods. So since it's a 5-year bond, we have 10 interest payments. So we're going to use 10. And the future value is the amount that the bondholders are going to receive for the principal, which is $80,000 at the end of 5 years. And remember, we have to use that negative sign. I've talked about that before. It's just irritating. Just do it.
Yeah, I wonder why you
It's a,
I just did it.
yeah, I went to a training seminar on Excel once, Sandy. I told them this last year. And the guy who did the training was like, I asked the Microsoft people, he'd like been in a meeting with the Microsoft people that created Excel or something. And he asked why you had to do it. And they couldn't even like really explain it.
Because when we used the charts, we never.
No, you wouldn't have had to do that. It's just know that you got to put the negative sign. It's not a huge thing. Let me show you. Okay, if I don't put the negative sign, okay, I just end up with a negative number here. You still get the same number. You don't get a wrong number. It's just a negative, and you don't really want it to be. So I always do the negative. I'm just going to put my negative sign back. So I always just put the negative sign in the actual formula, and that way it gives me a nice positive number there. Okay, it is. It's weird. It's just Excel. It's nothing except it's a glitch in Excel. Okay. If you get in the habit of it, you just don't think about it much. Okay, so the present value of receiving $80,000 at the end of 5 years at a market rate of 6% semi-annual payments, $59,527. So they're willing to pay in $59,527 for the principal. That's not all they're going to pay in for this, but that's the principal portion. The interest. Let's go back and do our function sign again. And PV should already be there now. The rate, and thankfully the rate and the period will be the same. We don't have to change that. It's the market rate cut in half. The interest, the period of the bonds doubled. All right, so it's going to be the same for both. The only difference is that we don't use the future value because that's a single payment. This time we use the payment key, the PMT, because it's an annuity. Because you're going to receive the $2,000 every 6 months for the next 5 years. So we're going to put in a negative 2,000. And again, if you forget the negative sign, you're still going to get the same answer. You just have to go back and put it in. So, all right. So, the present value of the bonds is the sum of those two present values for the cash flows. Remember the sum function up here? So I just hit the little sum function up here. It adds those two together for me. And there is the 76,588 that Mike told us the bondholders paid in. Okay. All right. Anything about that part that you need me to go back and redo? All right. So that, guys, is the carrying value of the bond on the date of issuance. The date of issuance was 1/1. I'm going to decrease the size just a smidge so I can get everybody in there. Okay. The 1/1/2019 was the date of issuance, and on that date, the carrying value of the bond, and I'm just going to hit equals there, was that number right there. $76,588, rounded. Okay, so the discount then is the 80,000 minus the carrying value. So F8 minus G8 is the discount on the bond. So the discount that basically, the discount the bondholders gave themselves by saying they wanted that market rate was $3,412. So just to reiterate what that discount tells us, or what it is, it's the interest, the extra 1% interest that they were demanding is that $3,412. That's how we're giving them that extra interest percent. Yes, Tyron.
We do not have an interest on.
That's correct. because interest is a function of time and no time has passed. So there's no interest due to them yet. That's right. The first interest is due on 6/30/2019. So the discount is simply by only paying in 76,588 when they're going to receive 80,000 at the end, it gives them that additional interest that they were demanding, that additional 1% interest. Okay? So I'll tell you what, why don't we stop here for a second and let's go in and make that initial journal entry that Mike should have made. This is the initial journal entry that Mike should have made. Let's go in and see what Mike did. Yep. Okay. So Mike, he knew that they got the 76,588 is the cash. So he simply recorded cash of 76,588 and bonds payable of 76,588. That's not correct. Okay, the bonds payable must be at the 80,000 and we must show the discount. So let's reverse Mike's entry here and then put on the correct entry. And it's already noon. Guys, I don't even know what to say most of the time about this. I have never seen time pass so quickly. Oh my gosh. All right. Did I just go down like a ton? Or did I just, nope, there it is. Okay. So let's reverse incorrect bond issuance entry. So we're going to debit 402, which is bonds payable, and credit cash for $76,588 and $76,588. I know somebody's going to ask me, so I'm going to hit it back over. There it is. Okay, and then let's put on the correct one. So they should have received cash of $76,588. They should debit discount on bonds payable, which is account 403 for $34.12. That's in our spreadsheet. We'll go back to it in just a second. Credit bonds payable themselves for $80,000. Pretty sure it's the bonds. And there it is. All right, so let's process that. Okay. That's what he should have recorded initially. Beyond that, the only entries that have to be made in the first year are the two interest payments, one on June 30th, one on December 31st. So let's go to our spreadsheet. Now, interest expense. So now we need to figure out what interest expense is, and I am going to make things, well, I always like to use formulas if possible. So I'm going to put the market rate of interest down here. Not there though. Is 6% annual. Semi-annual, we know it's half of that, right? Sorry, 5.5 divided by 2. There. Oh, no, got to reset that. Okay, so the formula is B21 divided by 2. Now, just if you're not used to doing formatting on Excel, let me show you what you would do here to make that a percentage. I would just go up here and hit percentage. Okay. And I like 3%, but if I wanted it to have more decimals or fewer decimals, I've got this little guy right here that would increase decimals for me if I wanted to. Okay. So I just made it a percentage, and it is 3%, which is exactly right. So my interest expense is equal to my carrying value, which is 76,588. So I just hit equals G8 times my semi-annual interest market rate. But don't hit enter yet, because I want to be able to carry this down like we do on our loans and our leases. So I'm going to fix that cell, that C21. Do you remember how to do that? The dollar signs, right. So if you have a computer that has function keys, you can hit F4. If you don't, you can put $C, $21. So go right in front of your C and you can hit F4. I guess I have to hit the function key now. Function F4, there it is, okay? And it automatically will put $C, $21, but some of you don't have functions, that's okay. You literally type a $sign in front of the C and a $sign in front of the 21, and it fixes the cell. So what that means is that Excel will know that I always want to multiply the carrying value by the interest rate that I gave it at 3%. Okay. So I have an interest expense, which is what's going to be on the income statement, of $22.98. Cash interest of $2,000. So the check that I'm actually going to send the bondholders, remember, is always going to be the $2,000. But oh my goodness, that's not going to balance that journal entry, right? I'm going to debit interest expense for $22.98. I'm going to credit cash for $2,000. Yikes. The difference, guys, is going to be the amortization of this discount. Sorry, got a little happy with my clicking. The amortization of this discount right here. It is the difference between the interest expense and the cash interest. So the amortization of the discount each period is the difference between the interest expense and the cash interest, B9 minus C9, which means my discount will be $298 less than it was at the beginning of the year. So that's going to be equal to E8, which is the discount currently, minus the amortization, which is D9. So E8 minus D9. The good news is once we do this one row out, we can copy down. Okay, so we only have to do this one time. So the carrying value is the bond payable less the discount, always. The carrying value is the bond payable less the discount. And yeah, hold on one second, Tyra. And it should increase every period until the end of the bonds. It should equal the bond payable. You've amortized the discount all the way to 0, and the carrying value should equal the bond payable amount. So hopefully we'll see that. Hold on one second, Haley. Okay, Tyron, what's your question? Okay. You may have to re-download it, and then I'm happy to send you what we've done so far. I can just post what we've done so far up on Connect, and that way everybody has it, so that if you do run into that, you can just re-download it. It happens to me too. I don't know why. Haley.
I'm sorry, I'm slow.
You're fine.
Can you show me how you got the amortization?
This one?
Yes.
Yes. It is the interest expense minus the cash interest. Okay? Got everything else?
My interest expense is showing $0 and it wasn't in that.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it should be the carrying value, which is G8.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I had to read.
That's fine.
Put things. Okay, thank you.
All right.
I'm back on track.
You're
Sorry.
cool. All right, so we now have a full line, and I probably should have just waited to do, let's see, let me think. Is it gonna matter? I don't think I should have just waited to do these. So we'll just redo them. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to highlight all the way from B9 to G9. Okay, so highlight B9 to G9. You're going to come to this little green square in the corner, and you want the skinny black cross on it. Okay, so hover over that little green square. You don't want the fat white cross. Okay, you want the skinny black cross. You're going to pull down to G18 or line 18 and let it go. And it didn't work. Oh, that's just rounding. That's because
You can do the autofill.
you can do it whichever way you want.
That's what I did, and then got down to 0.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you're right. Something happened. Hang on. I made a mistake somewhere. Oh, this one. Yep. Okay. So for some reason, it decided to increase all of these by $1. So come back up to F9 and just copy F9. And then select the rest of your column F there and paste 1, 2, 3. There you go. Oh, we got it. So we'll have to shoot.
I keep going back. Mine did it. I figured out how to do it though. Just hit the back button.
Okay.
So like before.
I'm sorry. I'm stuck.
You're fine. Just like go back to before you fill the cells.
Right. I don't know if it's going to let me. Let's see. I don't think it's going to let me do anything, guys. I'm so sorry. Yep, I did that wrong. I apologize.
But instead of like it popped up and I just did copy.
It worked for you. Yeah. I should have. And mine's stuck. So it sounds like you guys are okay. So I'm gonna go with that. I can pull up the actual spreadsheet so you can see it finished. Sorry about that. There it is. So that's what it should look like. Sorry about that. Okay, let me share this. So I'm not sharing the wrong one, the one that's stuck. There we go. Okay, so this is what it should look like when all is said and done. So the carrying value in the bonds payable should equal at the end of the maturity of the bonds. Okay, so all we have left to do for WebWorks then is to do those 2 interest payments. Okay, because Mike recorded interest expenses 2,000 and 2,000. So I'm just going to reverse what he did and just put on the correct entry rather than trying to fix his entries, because I think that sometimes that makes things more confusing. Okay, get rid of that. Go back to, let's share. The journal. All right, so on 6/30 and 12/31, Mike recorded this both times. Okay, so we know that that's not correct. That interest expense has to change each period, and we have to amortize the discount, which will change each period. Okay, so based on our amortization schedule that we just did, let's go ahead and reverse Mike's entries first. I'll just do both of them. And I could just do 4,000 total, but it's going to be a couple weeks before you go back to this and you'd be like, where did the 4,000 come from? It's 2,000 up there. I'd rather just do each one individually. So that was 751. Yes. So we're going to do 101 and 751 to reverse. Oh, no. No. Okay. And then we make that exact same entry again. So that's a 101 and a 751 for 2000. Yeah. I did indeed. Thank you. Really not having a very good day on this. All right, let's process those. Yeah, you guys always catch me on that because it'll be so irritating to all of us later on if you don't raise your hand and I've debited or credited the wrong account. Okay, and it is note payable because there isn't a bond payable interest, but note payable is pretty close. So, okay, now we need to record the correct interest payments. So that's going to be a debit to interest expense, a credit to cash, and a credit to the discount on notes payable. Okay, because we're going to amortize that. So if we look at our amortization schedule, and I apologize for those of you watching this later, I'm not going to share the screen, but you should have it in front of you. Interest expense was $22.98. Interest payment will always be $2,000. So $298 is the amortization of the discount. So you can just look straight across. All you have to do is look straight across your amortization schedule. So once you have the amortization schedule, it makes things so much easier to do the journal entries. And then the next one. Debit to 751, credit to 101, credit to 403. But it's not for $22.98 this time. It is for $23.07 is the second interest expense there. $2,307. Process. Okay. So if we went to look at the bonds on the ledger, the discount is now at $28.07. And it's $28.08 in our spreadsheet, so it's just off by a smidge. That's just rounding at that point, okay? So it's correct. All right. Questions on bonds? Because obviously we're not going to get anything else done today. All right, so I'm going to give you one more bond payable problem to work out for homework. And then probably going to have to go ahead and give you a couple videos to watch on inventory so that we can keep going. Because I like being able to do this in class. I like to be able to really work through problems and answer questions. So if I can present the material kind of online and then we actually deal with it in class, I know it's kind of like a flipped classroom, I guess, but I think it's better use of our time than me trying to present things brand new in here when you can just watch them on videos. I think since it just feels like we have such limited time in here. I feel like working problems together and working through the issues is probably better on here. But we only have till Wednesday, so I'm not going to give you a 45-minute thing to watch because the inventory, I'm also going to be asking you to do some work just like you did with the bonds. So we definitely won't be able to get it all done for Wednesday. That's okay, because we still have lots of things we can do in class. Hopefully we'll have time to do them. So probably what I'll do with the bonds is I'll give you a homework problem, and then I'll most likely just post the solution. And so that way, but if you have any questions on this, make sure you ask me in class. If you go back and review this and you're like, it's still not making sense, or something's not making sense, let me know. Okay. So I'll get homework posted as quickly as I can, and I will see you in class on Wednesday.
Can you see me how to fix my spreadsheet?
Yeah.
I don't know how to get it easily like you did.
So like,